We're going to go ahead and get started with our solid waste meeting. Today's date is April 1, 2025. The time is 11 a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Eberline, Duncan, and Matari. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Public comment. Hearing none. First business item. Number 1, projects 2025. It's a discussion item. We have public drop-off area, leachate treatment pilot, phase E3 construction. I assume that is South Cell permitting, and closure turf, and VersaCap engineering and design. And we have our director, John Phillips.
Yes, Commissioner Matari, John Phillips for the record. Just for clarification, the phase E3 is about construction. So I'll move through this. If you don't mind, I'll just move through the agenda, and if you guys want to.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. So this is your quarterly, good morning again, John Phillips for the record. This is your quarterly solid waste update. This presentation is designed to keep you informed while also giving you a brief overview of the many key aspects within the solid waste department. As I go through the agenda, feel free to stop me at any time if you have any specific questions. Some of this information may be a little bit redundant, but it's because these projects are ongoing. So with that, I'll begin with the Ramsey Transfer Station, and that's that new public drop-off area you've heard a lot about. As you know, Kootenai County Solid Waste and Jacobs Engineering have finalized the design and the layout for that future public drop-off area for small loads at the Ramsey Transfer Station. That future area will allow customers to come onto the transfer station property off Ramsey Road, drop off small loads of garbage, meaning a few bags of bagged garbage or containerized waste, and then leave the site without ever going through a scale or through the entire site. So that should really streamline operations. Central Premix did deliver all the needed rock for that. The county built the site with our own equipment. The side slopes were covered since the last fall with topsoil. And now we're seeing grass growing in the erosion controlled area, so that's a good sign, looks good. The staff has installed nearly all road signs and traffic control devices necessary for the project. 35 dumpsters that were ordered have now been delivered, and we now have them in place. I think all but about 5 of them are actually where they're going to be sitting once we open. Also, the used garbage truck that you approved for purchase has arrived, and it's on site and it's ready to go. So that new public drop-off area is anticipated. I'd love it to be open in April, and I'm really optimistic that we can pull that off. However, it could be in May sometime that it actually opens, but should open shortly. Any questions about that site? Okay. Moving on to the leachate treatment pilot update. So as you know, leachate is wastewater that comes out of the landfill. It's difficult to treat industrial wastewater. And as a reminder, the department was notified in December of 2022 that our regional POTW HARBs would not be able to continue accepting our excess leachate for treatment unless we started treating it and removing things like PFAS and TDS and any potential PCBs or anything like that that might be in the wastewater. So because of that, because we need to be able to take that excess wastewater to a wastewater treatment plant, we solicited certain equipment vendors to make sure we would be able to treat that. So we got out in front of the PFAS concerns. We ended up selecting a company called Dynatech out of New Jersey, who arguably has more treatment experience than anybody in the country with treating things like PFAS. And so Dynatech, we had them complete a bench scale treatability test of our wastewater. It appeared successful, so a PO was issued in May of 2024 for a pilot system, a full-size pilot to be delivered to the landfill. That pilot ended up being delivered late because of supply chain issues, and so we were forced this winter to try to get that set up. So we have purchased, we built a constructed lined area where it would sit, and then we purchased shipping containers that were insulated to house the unit so that we could protect the RO membranes from freezing. Currently, all necessary electric and plumbing components have been installed and are hooked up for operation. And this month, a representative from Dynatech is scheduled to come in and help us with startup of the unit and train our personnel in regard to operation. Once everything's working well and the effluent quality meets HARB standards, we're going to begin hauling that treated wastewater to HARBs to make sure that it doesn't impact their plant. Any questions about any of that stuff? Okay. Moving on to the phase E3 construction project. So as you know, The landfill Phase E3 expansion pretty much occurred last year. Selland Construction was the company that was awarded the bid and nearly all necessary work for that project. A final walkthrough was held in January of 2025, and it was determined that they've completed approximately 99% of the job. The only remaining items on the punch list are programming of the pump station. That's a leachate pump station. So that's just electronic programming, and then training related to the operation of the leachate pump station itself. Also, since the snow melted, we realized there's some additional erosion control and hydro seeding that will need to be reshot to make sure that we get good grass growth this spring. But the areas right now are too wet to get equipment on, so that will be likely occurring this month as well. In fact, I would anticipate that this project would be closed out hopefully by the end of April. Any questions on that phase of the landfill? Okay. Moving on to south cell permitting. Maybe I misspoke in the beginning. I missed that. So solid waste departments continued to work with Jacobs Engineering, Community Development, and local regulatory agencies in regard to the future permitting of south cell at the Fighting Creek landfill. This cell's been planned for over a decade, and we are currently working toward obtaining that new CUP to accommodate this new area for future landfilling of waste within the property boundaries already owned by our citizens. If approved, this will allow future operations to someday shift toward the southern end of our property boundary while extending the life of our publicly owned landfill by approximately 10 years based on a 5% future growth. And that would be if the growth maintained 5% from now all the way through 2052. So that is unlikely. It's likely that cell would last a little longer than that based on current growth if you look back at the previous 20 or 30 years. So it's likely that cell would last maybe clear till 2055. Any questions on that south cell permitting? Moving on to closure turf and VersaCap engineering design. This is a quickly approaching new project that I wanted to bring to your attention. So before the solid waste department can begin putting waste into that newly lined E3 area, we must go back into older areas of the landfill and cover that with, if you will, a waterproof cover and to minimize leachate infiltration, so storm water that could run into the landfill, I should say, and then run out the bottom of the landfill and increase our leachate numbers. We want to get that under control. And also that cap would help seal any emissions, so fugitive emissions like as in landfill gas. So it would help control odors and any emissions. So in this fiscal year, the solid waste department has planned to have Parametrics Engineering put together bid specifications for this future capping project. Closure funds have already been budgeted for this type of work. I recently asked Parametrics for a proposed scope of work and pricing related to the necessary bid specifications. Once received, I will bring this before the BOCC as a request to continue moving forward with that necessary project. Any questions about closure turf? Okay. So moving on to Fighting Creek landfill operations. Garbage volumes are slightly down from expected for this time of year, but the landfill is still receiving approximately 550 to 800 tons per day of municipal solid waste. The landfill crew and environmental technicians at that site have been doing an outstanding job this past winter by keeping up with daily operations, the placement of intermediate cover, and also the minimization of odors. I do want to give a big thanks to everyone involved in the hard work that they do each and every day at the landfill. Another part of operations is evaluating our needs for additional property. And recently, Kootenai Electric approached Kootenai County Solid Waste about their desire to sell property that's located directly across from our current operational entrance on Highway 95, so the main entrance at the landfill. Kootenai Electric has indicated that they're willing to sell that for appraised value, and I am open for BOCC input regarding this potential purchase. So just to give you a little bit of history, and I think you may have seen an email about this, but directly across from our main entrance is an 8-acre triangle-shaped parcel that the solid waste department used to own. That parcel was primarily owned, I believe, for buffer, and it is a good spot for a property that we would own for buffer purposes, in that fact that trucks coming in and out of the landfill, particularly out of the landfill, their headlights will sweep that property on every load when it's dark out. So as they exit, they would sweep the entire property. And also as trucks take off from the landfill, as you can imagine, they're on the throttle trying to get across those 4 lanes of traffic or get out into the acceleration lane. And so there's the potential for future noise complaints from a property owner if they were to put a house there. You would think that if somebody was to buy that property, that they would know I'm directly across from a landfill that's permitted well into the future, but that would be probably the most likely, most impacted parcel related to our entrance into truck traffic and operations. So the price that they're willing to sell it for is $32,550 per acre roughly, which is an appraised value of approximately $263,000 for 8.08 acres. I tried to look at a bunch of reasons. I went to the landfill to really look closely at that property and see if we could pull dirt off of it and use it for other purposes at the landfill. I don't see that just looking at surrounding parcels. I tried to look at, maybe there's needs by other county departments for the actual land. The land itself, I do not see, unless we use it for contractor laydown or a storage area for materials such as rock or landfill liner or things like that. I don't know of an immediate use. It could be used for a rural collection site someday, but we already have several sites in the area. It'd be nice if it was closer to the landfill, but even then, I would probably recommend putting something like that on the same side of the highway as the landfill so that we wouldn't have to cross the road. So I'm trying to give you both sides of the coin, so to speak, as looking at this property purchase, because I, for one, don't really believe in buying property just to buy it, because then we have to maintain it and we have to, perform, control the noxious weeds and things like that might grow on the property. But strictly as buffer and for avoiding future noise complaints, I do believe the parcel would be worth it for the county. We could always sell it down the road when the landfill closes or something like that if another department didn't need it. But any thoughts?
What would this do to your long-term planning budget? So if you purchased it for $263,000, how would that affect your post-closure monies? How would it affect your operations?
That's $263,000 is a very minimal amount of money for the solid waste department. I mean, it's a lot of money. We definitely care about spending $263,000. However, we do have the money available in our fund balance. It would not impact our future plan, this quantity of money.
Okay.
If it works for your operation and you recommend it, I trust your judgment. You've been an excellent director for our solid waste department. You've been extremely meticulous and diligent, making sure it runs well. I hear nothing but good things.
Thank you.
Most of the time, so,
I try, thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, I will pursue that and bring it back to the board then.
I think it's a great idea.
All right, thank you. I do agree, property is getting tougher and tougher to find in Kootenai County, so.
It is, and is it, what's the potential for looking forward into the future? Is there future needs? When would that happen? Can you make a projection?
Well, eventually the landfill will need more space. Right now, the way that the landfill is being constructed, there is opportunity for the landfill to be expanded, what I am asking for in the new CUP proposal. But that would have to be looked at down the road. But I do see that there's a lot more room, depending on engineering design, of course, for space at the landfill if we need it. So right now, the tribe has purchased a lot of property directly behind the landfill, which would probably be a great spot to expand. I don't know if they would ever be interested in selling any of that.
Why would they want it?
There was a landowner that was directly behind the landfill up the Fighting Creek drainage that had several hundred acres that they sold.
You're down at Fighting Creek?
Yeah, at Fighting Creek, yeah.
Shut them out.
Yeah.
Question, do you know what that parcel's zoned?
I do not at this time.
Okay.
I'll find that out for you though and email you for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions about that property acquisition? Okay, moving on to the landfill gas system. So overall, the landfill gas system has remained operating very well. The crew has continued installing horizontal landfill gas collection devices just ahead of refuse placement. We do this to minimize odors while performing this necessary work. So this is installing vacuum lines in order to actively withdraw landfill gas from the garbage. So try to do that and, like I said, minimize odors for the neighbors. Currently, we're collecting about 1,500 standard cubic feet per minute of landfill gas within that system. Approximately 1,000 standard cubic feet per minute is being burned by the gas-to-energy plant and being turned into electricity. The balance is being combusted via landfill gas flares. So Kootenai Renewable Energy, the company that owns the gas-to-energy plant, it recently solicited Kootenai County Solid Waste and is interested in possibly installing an additional generator for electricity production at the Fighting Creek facility. But they'd like to reopen the contract if they do this. So because of this, I went ahead and reached out to Paragon Engineering and Consulting, who has looked at this before, to see if the points proposed are worth considering. Once I get that answer, I will bring this to my board liaison and discuss that, and then we'll likely bring that before the BOCC to see if it's worth opening the permit, or I should say the contract. Any questions about that? Okay, so moving on to transfer station operations. The transfer station traffic volumes and waste volumes are slightly below normal for this time of year, not by much, but a little bit, and it's sometimes difficult to tell in just the first couple months whether you're truly on a downturn or not. Our crews have been doing a great job at both transfer stations, and operations have been very smooth with very few complaints. However, I do want to point out we did receive a complaint about screws on the asphalt near the commercial drop-off area at the Ramsey transfer station. In response, the department has begun running our magnet as well as our street sweeper often throughout both of the transfer sites, and we are documenting that now on our daily logs to show that we're making such an effort. Moving on to personnel and recruitment, all of our full-time positions, I almost hate to say this, have been filled, and we seem to be retaining our employees. A big thanks to the BOCC for being able to follow through with the pay plan over the past few years. It's definitely made a great deal of difference with our department. We've really been retaining those employees.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I trust that, with the pay, you're also getting good employees. I mean, really, ones that are productive for you.
We have been, but I got to tell you, we haven't had a lot of turnover lately. I'm sure we will see some, but the replacements we've been getting have been very good. Our one mechanic that we recently ended up acquiring at the Ramsey transfer station is exceptional, and it was almost impossible to recruit for that job in the past. And I don't know, we might have got lucky, but the guy he's really good. So,
Good.
But yes, we are getting good employees. So currently, the only jobs that we have open are seasonal positions, and although these temporary jobs are sometimes very difficult to fill, we remain optimistic about our chances of attracting potential candidates. Sometimes we get former employees that come back just for a couple days a week to help us out. So I'm really hoping we get those same individuals back to help us out with scale house duties and that kind of thing, because they're already trained. So, any questions about recruitment? Okay. Moving on to rural sites. So as you know, rural sites they're a very important component to the solid waste program. A lot of our citizens that live out in those areas really depend on these sites, and it's easy to forget how important these sites are, but they don't have garbage service, and it's just so handy for people to drop that waste off, and then also to minimize the traffic at the transfer station. So with that in mind, I want to say Sunshine Recycling has continued doing an excellent job with the haul of the refuse from the rural collection sites to the transfer stations. The sites have been looking, pretty good. Overall, the sites, the levels of abuse have been about as expected, so that's kind of constant. There's always people that leave items on the ground at those sites, even though we have signs up that say not to do so. But we do provide a full-time employee that travels around and tries to hit those sites every few days to make sure they pick up any kind of mess there is out there. Keep them tidy by cleaning up what people have disposed of, where they shouldn't. Just a quick reminder to the public, we really do need your help to keep your rural collection sites clean. Please don't place any items outside on the ground, outside of the containers, and any of those large items such as furniture or appliances really need to be delivered to a transfer station. They're not able to, be dumped out of one of those containers into a truck. It's actually dangerous. And in most cases, it's free to dispose of those items at a transfer station. So we really encourage people to come in and do that. Thanks in advance for your cooperation. Additional info for the public, all rural collection sites that have gravel lots are scheduled for spring maintenance. So Kootenai County Solid Waste will continue to fill potholes as needed throughout the spring. We do ask that people are patient, because typically these potholes are right where the asphalt meets the gravel, so right at entrances and exits, so this can be a difficult area for us to work on. Also, dust control application is scheduled for May of 2025 at our rural collection sites with those gravel lots. Moving on to the Wolf Lodge property update and future development. So as you know, we have purchased property in the Wolf Lodge Bay area with the intention of the construction of a future staffed rural collection site. This site will allow for future consolidation of some of those sites that are in outlying areas that are very small and have virtually no control. This will help minimize abuse by consolidating those sites. Kootenai County Solid Waste and JUB Engineering have worked closely together to come up with a suitable design while working towards the acquisition of a special notice permit. An application for this permit through community development was deemed sufficient in late December of 2024, and we're nearing the end of that permit acquisition process. I will keep my board liaison informed as things progress on that as well. Any questions about that? Okay. So moving on, I always hit patrol and public education because the sheriff department has been continuing to do an excellent job patrolling and educating the public at these rural collection facilities. This effort is greatly appreciated, and it's necessary to try to maintain some level of control at those outlying sites where we don't have any individuals permanently at those sites. Since the sheriff's department has started this patrol, the levels of abuse have generally reduced over time. They've flattened out a little bit, but just the presence of law enforcement does help keep those sites a little neater than they used to be. This, of course, saves the department many man-hours of cleanup each week. Again, I'd like to give just a public thank you to the sheriff's department for continuing to perform that much-needed work. Any questions about patrol? No? Okay, so with that, I'll move on to solid waste statistics. I did give you a quick little handout. The numbers are a little bit interesting, but like I said, we're only 2 months into this year, so we're comparing January and February of this year to January and February of last year. But in general, all of our numbers are slightly down. So the customer visits are down by 0.5%, which only amounts to 199 customers out of over 38,000, but still down slightly at the Ramsey transfer station. The tonnage is down 5%, so that's kind of surprising. If you ask me why, I'd say commercial volumes are likely down. February was pretty cold towards the end of February, so that could be a contributing factor as well. Looking at the Prairie transfer station, we see similar numbers, down 0.8% in customer visits, down 3.6% in tonnage. I would say for the same reasons. Fighting Creek overall is down 5%. And of that landfill tonnage, 665 tons was hauled directly to the landfill. So when we have larger construction loads, we have contractors hauled directly to, like if they're tearing down a house, rather than run that waste through the transfer station, we divert it straight to the landfill. And so that 665 tons represents those loads. But even when you look at rural's pretty much the same story. They're down 2.1% in customer visits and down 6.3% in waste. So overall, our waste is appearing down, at least in the first 2 months of the year compared to last year. Any questions about any of that?
Any questions? No?
With that would conclude my solid waste update.
Well, keep up the good work.
All right, thank you.
Public comment. We have a big one today. Hearing none, 11:23, meeting adjourned. Thank you.